Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of ShareWin Design podcast. Today we have with us Pierre Bidaud. I've very much anticipated this podcast today because I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot, and it's a theme and topic we don't discuss as much as we should in the construction industry and in the sustainability, which is the use of natural stone. And it's something that I would like to learn from Pierre as well. Why something that we've used historically for thousands of years, suddenly we stop using it that much, and the work he's doing to try to bring that material back. So, all to you, Pierre. And I think it would be good to start first. How would you define yourself, your role, and your profession?
Wow. Yes, it's quite a tricky one. People used to ask me, the usual questions. Where are you born? And I tend to say that now. I could say that maybe I've been born in a quarry. It's really where it started when very young. At the age of 18, I started to work as a stonemason, um, but I think also there is uh, something that attracted me was always architecture. So I think I would have loved to be an architect. That's something that I would love to be, but I'm not. So that's another thing I'm not. I definitely like uh, to to share my desire to see building in stone, and so now I would say I'm 70% shaman and preacher, and 30% stonemason. Uh, so yeah, I think it's important that some people with craft and knowledge, which I would not say endanger, but which are less talked about, should in fact rise up and talk more about those material and skill.
That I love what you said about 70% shaman and 30% stonemason. But I guess that's something that has evolved over time. And when you started, it was 100% stonemason. And then as you get more experience, I guess, and that comes with age, then you can teach others how to do the work. So could you tell us a bit more about that beginning and how you learned the actual profession of working
Yeah.
with stone?
So I was lucky enough to be when I was 18 to I was lucky to be pretty rubbish at school. So I had to make a choice, or my parents signaled me that I had to make a choice. And we have a brotherhood, workers' brotherhood in France, and which you join between 16 and 18. And this brotherhood is allow you to travel through France for 6, 8, 10 years and learn your trade, perfect it, along with your brothers, and now that the brotherhood has accepted women, now brothers and sisters, that through moving from one city, from one region of France to another, you learn about the specificity of your trade, which often with wood, with metal, with how do you call that, metal and uh, or leather, you are going to change. You are going to learn a different other way to organize yourself. Because the sandstone that you are working with in east of France is totally different from the granite in Brittany, or the limestone of Val de Loire. So I think it's I think that that was a fantastic way to dive into a material, but also meeting so many mentors, which usually, of course, are the owner of a business or maybe a practitioner themselves, but also younger men as well, which will train you while you are going through France doing your long apprenticeship and learning about the
Mm.
material.
I think that's fantastic, and it's a really good initiative. Is that still happening, and is it successful, and young people still join that, or is that decreasing the number of people that join?
No, so what's happened? It has been so the brotherhood, les compagnons as they are called,
Hmm.
hein, compagnons, which mean in the old language, bread sharing. So the this those association have been extremely how to call that, extremely popular and very yeah, very popular in the last 20 30 years, because for a lot of young men and women who don't know where they are in life and do not feel that they have a place in the academic world, that suddenly give them an amazing possibility for an adventure in a craft and developing a relation with their hands and natural material.
Hmm.
And of course, unfortunately, the last 5 years have been 4 years since the burning of Notre Dame in France. Our guild, Les Compagnons, have been extremely popular because a lot of compagnons are
Hmm.
involved or compagnons or all trades are being showcased a lot more than they used to.
And what do you think? Because there is a kind of renaissance of stone nowadays, although it's not as much, I'm sure, as you would like to. But why do you think we stop using stone at some point with the at the modern age or with the industrial revolution? And why do you think now we are going back, trying to go back and use more materials? So people like you are becoming more and more popular, and you're being asked to work with the stone.
That is that is a big question. Alors, I think um, I, I think through the 20th century, through the two big wars, would change so many things in our industry, in the construction industry, with lack of skilled labor, with you know each time a new world to rebuild after each war. Um, Stone didn't have its place. It very much was, I think, a sort of symbol of an old era, and people wanted to embrace modernity, and stone was not this modernity. Um, I think when you look at the 1889, for example, exhibition, the Universal Exhibition in Paris. One of the competitor to do the Tour Eiffel, this 1,000 feet tower, was all in granite and bronze and sorry, and wrought iron. And as you can imagine, it's still that got that got the job. And I think that that's really show suddenly the tight embrace of modern material from this time onwards. I think also, and even more since the 70s. Um, Stone has been seen, as I was talking about the Notre Dame Cathedral. I think, unfortunately, the beautiful work of stonemasonry, in palace and in a beautiful mansion in cathedral, has been a curse and a blessing. A blessing because each time that I'm saying, or my colleagues are saying they are stonemason, people are saying, oh, you just build cathedrals and that's fantastic, all this work, this intricacy. Um, but it's a curse because people see it very much like that, as a material of the past. They forgot all the bridges for the train. So many stone bridges have
Mhm.
been built in Spain, in Italy, in France, in spanning spanning very large and wide space. So stone has been relevant and being used as a very efficient material until the 1900s, 1920s. But I think yes, yeah, cathedral in fact have been a blessing and a curse for us.
And then, but now there is somehow a revival with the stone, and
Yes,
more people are trying to use it. And also, you said something about the stone not being modern, but at the same time, people love stone buildings. So it's like we love it, but as a thing of the past, not something that we want for current or the modern buildings. But also, you mentioned, I've seen you mentioning several times about buildings in France being built in, I believe, 60s, 70s. You can correct me there. And there was a study about it, and whoever did the study found out that the stone buildings would have a lower, at the time they wouldn't be looking at embodied carbon, they would look at the energy
yeah,
to produce the stone or to cut the stone in the quarry compared to concrete, for example. And they built a lot of buildings in with the stone,
yes, yes,
but that
yeah.
also stopped. So could you tell us a bit more about that, please?
So yes, so once upon a time in France in 1947. So what happened was that from 1948 onwards, we had to rebuild a huge amount of affordable housing scheme in the northern part of France and part of the south. Um, and as you can imagine, France was really poor in energy, in coal. They were really short on skilled labor, of course, because a lot of young men and have been died during the war. So they needed a material that was going to be cheap, easy to fix, to put together, and widely available. And the French government in 1950 commissioned the French government. It decided to commission a study on the impact of energy consumption and material. Because of course they wanted to use as much as possible cement to make concrete and steel and so on, but decided in fact to shift it to a lot more infrastructure work where it was needed to redo bridges, tunnel, roads, etc. And the study just proved that you needed 220 kilo of coal for a cubic meters of reinforced concrete, when in fact for the same amount of stone, for the same amount of compressive strength, you needed only 10 kilo. So you can see the ratio and the efficiency of the material. So using a material up to 6 or 7 floor, using a simple material with good compressive strength up to 7 to 10 floor, why not use stone? Because France is very much a stone country, has always been a stone country. Um, we we had good knowledge of extracting stone. However, for the last 40 years, the stone industry have been falling into disarray. And the French government decided to give subsidies and quite a bit of money to quarries all around France to pivot to a lot more heavily industrialized stone extraction system, which they did very well. At some point, in France, I think you were fitting 1 square meter of load-bearing stone every 3 minutes. People used to say, well, maybe it's the south of France, they tend to exaggerate, but people used to say that a stone was extracted in the morning and fitted in the afternoon. Um, but if a quarry is well studied in a way it can well study about its output, what sort of module you can get out of stone, then the architect of the time didn't have the choice. They had to work with the module coming out of that quarry. Um, and I think that was an incredibly clever way of moving forward quickly.
Mhm. Yeah, that's very interesting, and we still see some areas as well. We are involved in a documentary film about Canlis, John Utson's house in Mallorca, and he used also the same module because in in Mallorca they use the 80 by 40 by 40 module, and you have to build using it, and then you can cut it in two pieces or three or four, and it's the same principle. But what I'm interested as well is at what point, because the government made those calculations, it's very obvious that the stone was the right choice. At what point that stopped, and then all the materials became the priority.
So I think there is several, maybe a couple of possibility. Is concrete became from the 17th onwards a lot more affordable. Um, Again, more affordable, and technology made it a lot faster to be poor on site. Also, I do believe that being cheap, and by having a society using a lot more cars in cities, they started, especially in France. I think it's the same in Italy and Spain. But people love having underground parking spaces. So if in the middle of Paris you start you had built in stone for a very long time, for the last 20 years, and suddenly there is all these cars who need to be parked somewhere. Your parking space are going to be done in concrete, in reinforced concrete. And if you've got the main contractor already with with this stuff on site, is going to tell you, well, now that we are here, we might as well carry on building in concrete. And fair enough. I think it's what happened. And and I I think for a long time before that, especially in the US, stone was starting to be used a lot more as a veneer, as a cladding, and I think that started to interest quite a few architects in France, and with the facilities of building in concrete and then cladding in stone. When energy is so cheap, and you don't specially know where the cement come from and so forth. Well, you might as well have this makeup of stone layered on concrete or steel building.
Hmm. But now we are in a different scenario where clients and architects and engineers and everybody is worried about carbon emissions, and we have the climate change issue as well. So we are looking at other alternatives to concrete. So, and we are looking back to how we used to build before. And stone now it's coming to the front because that
Yes,
energy that before was unaffordable from a cost point of view, now it's because of the cost is it might be again a problem because the cost of the energy, also the cost of the materials, but as well the CO2 emissions. And that's when stone becomes competitive from that point of view.
that's it. Yeah.
So, and what is your experience with that? How have you seen evolving that demand for stone in your career in the last, let's say, 10, 15 years, or even the last 5 years?
So um, what I would say is that um, if we take the example of France, since Atelier Perrodin in the year 2000 decided to use stone to make out of the ground cellars for wine and so on, they've been started a sort of curiosity on stone, and what could be done in stone, and with some quarries which, in fact, what you need to create a market, it's sort of necessity of some of the people extracting material, maybe wood or stone. And when Atelier Perrodin contacted those quarry in the south of France, the stone was not a stone that was so good for flooring or cladding. It's the outlet was not there for them anymore in the year 2000, and very much building on some of the knowledge from the 50s about optimizing blocks, making a sort of module, like you were saying, that you had in Spain, and they started to say, why don't we stick to a certain module use the thermal mass of stone, use that very easy way to put a stone on top of each other with just a bed of mortar, very simple, and see where it goes. And when this all started in 2000, 2005, you can see quickly architects in France starting to get a lot more interest in that material, starting it to mix it with wood, having sometimes some concrete also as a for floors, for the floor planks, and you really can see a sort of new architecture in stone, especially with architects. We started to embrace what make I do believe stone so beautiful. It's that it's all its failures. It's all its fossils, is different in colors. It's all that made the beautiful buildings, may they be barn or mansion, so beautiful and so human. I think that was beautiful as well is that suddenly in even very large scales, new scheme may it be community centers or housing, you could put back a bit of human touch by this such a natural flawed material, and something that people tend to thought about was of course cost. Stone is going to be expensive, but in fact, what happened is that some quarry and some of the stone they extract can be seen as an architect put it as some wonky vegetables. It's all the stone that has been rejected that nobody wanted, because as we were discussing before, you had to do this perfect cladding in the middle of this financial district in London, New York, Paris, and that architect or clients wanted something completely homogeneous, and suddenly you've got all these blocks of stone that nobody wanted. You could get them at an affordable price and build solidly for a long time, and doing exactly the same job as concrete.
And you mentioned many interesting things there. I think optimization is one of the things that are key. And related to that, most of the work or a lot of your work is with post-tension stone, which is something that I don't know when you started using it, because that's not how the old buildings would work. This is a new way of to make stone work in for different purposes. If they
Yeah.
take horizontal load, sorry, vertical load as well. So could you tell us about that process and why you started working with that and the demand as well, please?
Well, it's by I have to say it's just by pure jealousy and envy that us as stonemason, we were looking at this incredible concrete staircase from
Mhm.
designed by Perret, by Nervi, and so forth, and they were all beautiful and very light and so elegant, and some of us, 20 years ago, we said, I'm sure it's possible to be doing that in stone. And we, a couple, maybe half a dozen of stonemason decided to look at what happened in the world of reinforcement for stone. And it happens that from Peter Rice with the Sevilla Pavilion in 1992 of a sort of reinforcing stone from the outside of the stone, just a sort of reinforcing with stainless cables and rebar from the outside of the stone to works by Michael Hopkins, architect, in 1994 in Cambridge with pillars of stone being reinforced just to avoid their buckling. The sort of stone pillars on steroid, where you would put this sort of rebar through it, apply compression to
Mhm.
the structure by tensioning the cables. And we thought, I'm sure things can be done also using cables, using the Freycinet system of post tensioning. And then working with Steve Webb at Webb Yates in London, we started to little by little to make our staircase not only 90 degrees using the system, but 120, 180, 200 degrees, and having the same slenderness, even sometimes more slender than concrete,
Mhm.
just by adding this touch of innovation of artificial compression, um, because stone works beautifully in compression. But we started to sort to think, but because something that makes us very special, at the stone masonry company, is that we we really try to capitalize on what we learn. We just don't want to do one jobs and then go back to I don't know, a Gothic fireplace or a classical mansion. No, what we want to do is to work a lot more for our time, with and trying to solve some of the issue in construction and of our time, which is the carbon consumption, and that post-tensioning, that pre-tensioning, because now what we do is these pillars that we were doing, or the staircase that we were doing on site. Now we prefabricate everything at our yard, and so what we do is a sort of uh, natural concrete precast system. We use the concrete that took 145 million years to be done, and just inject some 21st century or 20th century technology, with 21st century software knowledge, and new engineering technology. And what we do is that we try to switch elements that are usually in precast concrete, so heavy in carbon footprint, and just to switch to just using stone, all this stone that nobody wanted, and to put them proudly back into our cities, maybe through as beams, columns, and so forth.
And I think you mentioned what you're talking about there as well is about efficiency, which is something that
Yeah,
we have to do with any material. It doesn't matter the material we used, we have to use less of them. And with that system, you are making much more slender, so they are more beautiful, but they are also much more sustainable, because then with the same material you can make two stairs or two structures. So,
that's it.
so
That's it.
which buildings would you highlight? So, which buildings would you refer to that people can look online and have a look? Because I know some buildings like the Amin Tajas in
Yes.
Clerkenwell, for example, it's a well-known building. There was a lot of controversy for planning, but I think it's a really good example of how you can use load-bearing stone in a contemporary building.
Completely. So um, the building we did with Aminta and group work in and again Webb Yates
Hmm.
in 2016, was that exactly, trying to be as efficient as possible, trying to have the right module of pillars and lintel, not go over, not the not to design something that would require some longer stone, some longer time to wait to get those stone, and so forth. Um, Very much working it as a precast system, and for the reinforcement and post tensioning, there is uh, the Elizabeth Building Library in Cambridge, that was done by Michael Hopkins and Bureau Happold in 1994. But there is the beautiful Padre Pio Church, designed by Renzo Piano, built in 2011, which are beautiful arches made of reinforced, locally sourced stone, 50-meter across, 16-meter high. So that's Padre Pio Church in Italy. But there is also Gare Saint-Charles in Marseille, that has been using as a pillars. Also, I can go on and on, but
Hmm.
again, it's something that the stone industry has been very good at, and it's to be very bad at communication.
Hmm.
And we do not communicate on this incredible feat, and of stonemasonry, and of engineering, and of architecture. And that's a shame because there is plenty of opportunity to talk about that.
Hmm. And something you touch on as well, which is locally sourced materials. So with this, that's something that's becoming more and more the norm, like, and more attention to, like with carbon. So we went to a globalized world, and now it's becoming more localized for everything from food to materials. So that means that, sorry, stone in this case, and the way you work with the stone, in theory, you can use almost any stone from the region that you are, because you are currently based in the UK, aren't you?
Yes,
In
yes,
London. So
totally, yes.
the stone there would be different to the one you mentioned earlier in France, and would be different to the one in Ireland or in Spain or anywhere in the world. But the technology and your methodology could apply to any of them.
Yes, yes, very much so. Now there is uh, there is some constraint that we cannot forget, and there will be first local regulation,
Hmm.
because some country will, I think some country will lead the way in thinking, look, our regulation that we've done so forth are just for concrete and steel, and we need to move and include other material. We need to change Euro codes. We need to um, to uh, uh, to adapt to this sort of new way of building. And I think that's very important. I think that will be a political will
Hmm.
that will be that need to happen. And once you change that, then this regulation help to codify that. I think yes, you can start to democratize more and more those systems. Um, it's going to be political, but it's going to be educational, because then you,
Hmm.
you will need the new
Yeah.
generation of engineer to know about how to use stone. Um, Maybe, as you said rightly, to to find again that intimacy that architect and engineer had with stone, or some other material. Working in an area of a radius of 100 kilometers, and knowing all the quarries, so a bit more time um, out of their office and of their screen, and be models for architect an engineer, and maybe that would be good for for the profession to open their chakra to other to a bit more of open and fresh air. We might have some free range architect and engineer who will go a lot more in the field to
Hmm.
learn and to discover what can be the natural material of their area.
Hmm.
Why not? That can be
Yeah, yeah.
an
That,
utopic dream.
and I think you're right. The education is definitely an important part of it for architects, engineers, but also the actual craftsmen that are going to be
Yes.
working with that stone. So how you find now in the UK for your company, how easy or difficult you find to get people to work in it and learn a profession or a trade,
Well,
sorry, more than a profession.
I, I think the will, the curiosity for young men and women is there. I think people are. I I believe that sometimes people tend to be a bit too harsh on people, on the next generation, saying it's people who don't want to work, who don't want to, who are lazy, who just want to have it easy. I think no, I think the construction industry need to be a lot more seductive, a bit more
Hmm.
seductive. Sorry, to have a proper workshop, well lighted, to have possibility of training, or continuous training. You will need to be a lot more appealing to
Hmm.
the young generation, and we'll find the people to do that. But it is true. You are talking. People don't realize that, but um, when you are working on site, you have to be an athlete in a way. You're using your
Hmm.
body as a tool,
Hmm.
and you need to be careful with it. And that's why it's very hard on your body. And if your infrastructure around your work can be good, I think we'll get a lot more people. We can get the people and to do the job. It's just that I think, yeah, we just need to be a bit more appealing.
Mhm. And
Um,
I think that habit is across the industry that needs to be more appealing because there is a lack of people to work in construction, and that's generalized. That's why the industry is moving towards a more off-site construction and modern
yeah,
methods of construction. And you mentioned working in a factory, so the work you do it's mainly done in a factory environment as well, and then transported to a site and
yeah,
installed there.
yes,
So I think it's very interesting. We I think we have still a few minutes. I would like to know what do you think is the future, not trying to read the future, but what do you think in the next 5 years, where you see stone? Because we move in the last, whatever, 50, 60, 70, or 80 years, steel and concrete are the main materials. Now we are starting to use more timber, some stone, some bamboo in other countries. So where do you think stone can get realistically in the next 5 to 10 years? So instead of being just one building here and one building there, it can become a real alternative to the main materials currently being used.
well, if we look at again, I don't want to go back to the exception française, which will be bad for us, to have this French exception. But I think if we look at the French model, you can see a huge appetite for architects, and not only appetite, but also quarry. We can also follow that appetite. Because if you are hungry, you just want to have the right food on the table, and the quarry is providing this amount of stone, so that's not the issue. So in France, they you can see this very much happening, because I think there is a bit of frustration from the architect world, and clients also, where they came from that very much everything in steel, and everything is concrete, and then everything is CLC or wood, and I think it's maybe pushing a bit too hard on that at the moment. Even if let's face it, CLT and the wood industry are what they are doing is still very modest to the
Hmm.
scale of what we are
Yeah,
using in
indeed,
concrete.
indeed.
Sometimes you look at the concrete industry starting to uh, pile up some bad stories on wood, and you want to say, "Come on, guys, you still, you just leave a bit of, leave us some crust for God's sake."
Mm.
So I think, as I say, architects want to have some other sustainable material, scalable sustainable material
Mhm.
on their table, and just having wood at the moment, or this sort of low carbon cement, I don't think that's enough. I think people want to engage a lot more with other material, with again with locality, and I think in 5 years, I think we could see a lot more small scheme of, again, I'm always back to that, to affordable housing, to come small community centers, why not small hospital, all done in stone, using less concrete. I think that that's a possibility. I think that what we are trying to do with our colleague and quarry owners, other manufacturers, but also engaging with architect and engineer. I think altogether we can see
Mhm.
some first scale good scale project being done in the UK. Yes.
I think that I would love to see that happening as well. And but when I was talking to a few people, friends and colleagues, and about that, I was going to talk to you, and I've been looking at your work and reading about it. One of the things they said, and you touched on that before, is but stone is expensive. So if a 20 millimeter stone is expensive, imagine a full block of that stone. So
Yes. Okay.
what would be your answer to that?
Okay. So my answer is exactly that, the wonky vegetable. Okay. It's, as you were saying, 20 millimeters of stone are sold like it's called gold dust. It is not. Okay. It's what cost to the quarry is the heavy selection of the material. Okay, that was it's costly. To try to have, when the benchmarking is done at the quarry for cladding in a financial district in London, it's 100 of square meters that's going to be put on the crusher because it's not the right color, because it's got too many fossil, because of this and that. It's really really sad. It's really
Mhm.
painful for quarry owners. We just cannot see again so many square meterage of stone just going to the crusher. Some output of some quarries, for their main material sometimes is just 3 to 5%. That's the output. So that means that you've got
That's
95% of blocks,
waste.
which it I'm I'm always a bit against the word waste, but
Okay.
yes, they are qualified it as waste. But 100 years ago, the grandfather in that quarry, he would have slapped you, saying that that's not going on site. It would have been stupid when you know the human energy that you would have needed
Yeah.
to extract things. But again, because energy is so cheap, we don't give a toss. We've been spoiled for so long. And I think
Yeah.
that your colleagues are really true that if they look at the price of a 20 mil thick stone, it's very expensive. So, but if you look at the 95% of stone discarded, which are mechanically good and can be used straight away on a job, and also that this thick wall that are being built at the moment in Spain or in France, 300 mil stone thick is much easier to reuse than the flipping 30 or 20 mil thick stone slab.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
the reuse is a big argument.
Yeah, I like what you said when we spoke earlier, that when you build with a stone, your building is actually a quarry for the future.
Exactly.
And we've
That's
seen
it.
that happening throughout the history, that buildings built 3,000 years ago, the stone was taken and then used in another building and again and again.
E-
So
Exactly.
that's a good point as well. What you said about the 3 to 5% being used, I think that's unbelievable. So, and that's because you touch on that, and we want that those pieces of stone to be perfect and the color
Yes.
to be exactly the same like the other one. But that's somehow against the material itself because it's a natural stone and you're not going to find that perfect stone. So
No.
that's again related to the education piece you said earlier. A stone is a natural material, same as others, and you have to be mindful of that and expect that there will be differences. And that's the beauty of it, isn't it?
Exactly, but I think it's very much our twisted world. It's nothing to do with the architect. It's nothing to do with the quarry, but it's this sort of. At some point, I think what happened is that the stone industry started to lose market because of the ceramic industry. We could supply ceramic industry and so on. We could supply a very homogeneous material, and ceramic just pushed the quarries to try to select their material to a point that was totally unnatural. Okay, and what's it's even more, I think, incredible to think that some of the quarry are extracting some extremely strong stone. With sometimes up to 120 MPa, 180 MPa, and this very much stone that you are slabbing in 30 mil is going to be used as your worktop in your kitchen to cut your tomatoes. It's amazing because that stone could be used to build columns, lintels, planks, with a much lower carbon footprint, and we are using it to cut tomatoes on.
Mhm.
It's really incredible.
Yeah, I think when you put it that way, it really is something to think about, definitely. And that is something when we think about construction, and we are all in this path towards a lower carbon world. We can't just blame uh, like architects and engineers and contractors. It's also everybody as a public. If we demand that high purity quality stone, as you said, to cut tomatoes, we are responsible of it as well.
Of
And
course.
that's that shift in education. So yeah, I think it would be. Would you are you involved in any education programs about the use of stone?
So it's what we are trying to push now. We are trying as I say, quarry owners in the UK, in France, but also engineer, to try to see if we can more or less, as the CLT industry, the wood industry did for the last 20 years,
Hmm.
if we should, and we should start, editing some guide on the use of stone in construction. The stone industry is very fragmented. You've got to understand that the stone industry goes from the guy who do a headstone for cemetery to a person restoring a gargoyle in Westminster, and everything in the middle, flooring, cladding.
Mhm.
So I think we just need to reassess that situation and say, why not develop an organization that will promote the use of stone as a construction material, the use of reinforcement in stone, also to push that solution, and so that it getting a bit more uh, articulate for the articulate and a bit clearer for the architect and engineer on how to use stone. Because again, it's all about education,
Mhm.
and we need to get on that, and so that's my 70% shaman and preacher
Okay,
at the moment.
that's very interesting. So I would love to hear more about that. And if there is anything we can help with sharing an event on our website or anything, please let me know. And I think
Yes,
to finish, because I could continue talking to you for hours, and so I hope we have an opportunity
with good
to meet
question,
in person.
Juan, we can go on and on. Huh?
And I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to do that. But I would like to ask if there are developers and clients, potential clients listening today, and whether they are public or private, and they are interested in stone, but they've never realized that was an option, or they see all the risk and, as you said, the regulatory barriers and all that. What would you say to those people? What would you ask them to start with, or looking at, or get in touch with?
Well, so I think first of all, I would be, uh, especially if you are talking about stakeholder like private developers or public developers and so on. I would stay quite modest on the size of the building. 8, 10 floors max. Um, I will, if I will make sustainability and efficiency of the material my key, my key, my key reasons, so that colors, texture, all that is after. Okay, it's all
Mhm.
about efficiency of the material, because then you start to be a lot more affordable. Okay, because if you go into ostentatious architecture, fancy cantilevering that doesn't make sense and so forth, then we are going to develop some solution, because with our team we love to develop solution. But what we are trying to do now is, in fact, we will say, no, we are not going to give you that solution, because that solution is wasteful, and that's going to impact on your budget. And let's enjoy the first that pure commitment to stone and building healthily and sustainably, and then by default, in a way, I'm sure you see that already, Joan, with all the things all the way, all your broadcasts, but sustainability will bring you generosity and harmony, and as by default, beauty.
Yep.
It's what make that little barn in the countryside so beautiful. It's because it was done with the local resources. It was done with practicality, and that's what make it beautiful. So
Mhm.
I think that I'm sorry to say, but yes, maybe less ostentatious architecture will go a long way, and that's it. But if the commitment and the belief is there, we cannot make it. We can only make it happen
Okay.
beautifully.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think I like finishing talking about beauty in architecture after talking about post-tension. I think it's interesting as well, because it's definitely beautiful. And stone, as I said at the beginning, it's a material that I can't think of anyone that would say I don't like building stone buildings. And they are so simple, many of them, and it's just one stone on top of each other. So they are also very much like a, it's a rational thinking. It's how they
Yes,
have to be.
yes.
What you
That's
said earlier, the cantilevers and things that, as an architect, we would and engineers would develop to prove that we can do something and go beyond the lines. With the stone, is I guess it's just taking one step back and say, let's think about how physics work,
yes,
and then
yes.
be efficient. So, and
Yeah,
that's what we need a lot in nowadays, isn't it?
No, no, it's exactly no. You are totally right. It's exactly that. It's just that it's allow you as a designer to pull you back a bit and make you think a bit more. So I think again, it's developers, it's a client, it's an engineer, an architect who just want to think a bit more.
Mhm.
Okay, and,
Okay.
and to think a bit more, to use a bit less.
I like that to finish. That I will use that quote sometimes. So thank you very much, Pierre. It's been a pleasure, and
No,
we
no,
hope to have you in the future for one of those educational events or anything. Let
yes,
us know, and we'll post it happily on our platform as well.
it was a pleasure. I can only thank you and your team. Great questions, and you make me feel really at ease. So thank you very much. You are
Thank
natural.
you. Our pleasure. Thank you very much, and I'll see you
Thank
around.
you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.